I live in the country, and one of the things my husband and I love to do is to ride around our property on the trails he's built up over the years. Early in the summer, right after one of those massive rainfalls we had, we went on a ride and we drove over some ground that was softer than we expected. Before we knew it, we were stuck. The back wheels had dug themselves in and they were spinning round and round and round, creating a rut where none had been before. My husband tried to maneuver the vehicle and got it to move a little this way, maybe a little that way, but it wasn't enough to really get it going. Eventually, he had to get at our tractor to tow the vehicle out of the jam we put ourselves in. I see this little incident as a metaphor for the holes we often put ourselves in. There are times when we're struggling with issues that may not have snap solutions, and then we feel ourselves stuck in that miasma of uncertainty. And if we do nothing about it, we might even resolve to stay in that place for the rest of our lives. But my next guest says it doesn't have to be that way. Becca Ribbing is a coach and author of the Clarity Journal, and her mission is to help women stop going around in circles and to find the answers to what they're searching for in their lives. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Becca.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Becca, why do you think people get stuck in that cycle of uncertainty?
I think that people get stuck in that cycle because we are almost trained to get stuck in it from childhood. When we are kids, we have all of these great aspirational dreams, and we listen to the adults around us, and a lot of the adults around us are constantly talking about how much they don't like their job, how much they wish they were doing something different. And so we start getting socialized to kind of make ourselves smaller. And then we go to school. And when we're in school, we usually have something we're good at and a couple things we're not so good at. And when we're in class, when we get report cards, the teachers are always focused on what you can do better. They aren't focused on, hey, this is an amazing strength of yours. You should really focus on this. Instead, they're telling you, oh, you really should stop talking so much in class. Oh, you seem behind in math. You're not trying hard enough. And when by the time we get out of high school, we've just heard this so much that we start to believe it for ourselves. And instead of really seeking out our strengths and really validating them and owning them, we end up making ourselves smaller and smaller because that's kind of how we've been taught. And so I believe that we really, to break out of that cycle, we really need to get back in touch with ourselves and really value all aspects of ourselves and all parts of ourselves, but also really value our dreams. And I'm on a mission to help people do that.
Now, I may have the numbers wrong, the amount of numbers, but something like, we think something like 90,000 thoughts a day, and 75 to 80% of them are negative thoughts. And do you think it's that focus on that keeps us just believing that we can't as opposed to we can?
I think it's partially that. And then I think it's also partially that we are scared of our negative thoughts. And so when we have a negative thought, we try to push it away instead of really face it head first. And when we can start really paying attention to the negative thoughts, then you can actually counteract them. But if you really are trying to avoid them in the first place, you don't see it and you just keep kind of careening from one thing to the next.
Mm. Do you see any particular themes or any personality traits for those who mostly are the ones who can't figure out what they want?
That's a really good question. I feel like a lot of them say they don't know. Like if I start talking to someone who is really stuck and doesn't know what they want, they spend so much time talking about how they don't know. But when I really get into it with them, when I really start talking one on one, it becomes very obvious that they actually do know. What it is they haven't decided. They know a range of things that they would like. Usually it's between two or three things they're trying to decide about. But because they're so focused on not knowing, they don't even really tackle that decision making process. They are stuck in, I don't know.
And it also brings up the whole idea of fear. They're afraid to make that decision.
Right, because it might be the wrong decision. And I think that that's the other thing. It's I think we feel like, going back to my school analogy, we feel like there is a right and a wrong decision because in school, you're either going to get an A or you're not. And so we get into the real world and we feel like we should be making a right decision, but the problem is both of the decisions you're probably trying to choose between probably are 80% decisions. You're not going to get to a place of this is 100% the right decision and that other decision is 0%. Like there's just no way that would work. You've already filtered out everything that is just totally not viable, you don't want to do. You don't even think about those things. So the things that you are thinking about, the things you are going back and forth and circling about, they both could be valid answers. The real question is what uses more of your strengths? What leads you to where you want to be long term? Because I think the other reason why we stay stuck is we feel like this answer needs to be the answer for the next 30, 40 years. Like, what do I want to do with my life? When you ask that, it's your life. It's however long you're going to be working, as opposed to what do I want to do for the next 3 years? And how would that lead me in the direction of where I want to go?
And the other part of that for me is, and this also goes into what I do with helping people understand their dreams, is, a dream is an interesting idea. It's an interesting story, but it doesn't really mean anything. It won't have an effect on you unless you take action on it. And it's the same thing with any thoughts we have. If we even have those, you said a person deciding between two different ways to go and doesn't do anything because they don't take action on either of them. So
Right.
how do you get somebody to take action?
Well, I think that part of the process for me is really helping people figure out why it is they're having a hard time taking action, because our brains are very smart and subtle. So your brain is going to have a really hard time taking action if it feels like you might change your mind in a month and that action is going to be wasted. So I feel like the first part really is gaining that clarity and then also getting comfortable with starting friction. Because I think once we start getting started on our dreams, we're doing something new and there's inevitably going to be things you have to learn, things that aren't as comfortable as what you were doing before, things that you need to really work around and maybe hire out or get help with. I think that's also another big thing now that I think about it is that we don't ask for help at the beginning oftentimes. Like, and we don't, when we get stuck, we don't ask for help. And that gets us really gummed up when we're starting to go for a dream because it means so much to us. We so don't want to fail. But on the other hand, it's also like this precious little baby, and we aren't giving it its what it needs to really grow organically, strongly, and quickly.
But you bring up a very interesting point. I know for me, I really didn't get myself unstuck until I really started to just take that action and decide to take the action and uh, to really, actually said, make the decision to do it.
Right. Because when you're stuck in indecision, you're just not going to have the momentum you need.
Mhm. So when people tell you that they're stuck, how do you get them unstuck?
I spent a lot of time listening and making sure that the person really hears within themselves what is holding them back. Because I am a big believer in mindfulness And a lot of times when people talk about mindfulness, they're talking about meditation. And then a lot of times we've westernized meditation and we skip over that part where you're supposed to actually notice everything that's going on within yourself and outside yourself. And we skip straight to the, okay, let go of the thoughts, let go of the thoughts, let go of the thoughts. And so I really try to help people come back to really listening to themselves, like really noticing when they're reacting to something and then working with it, whether that is journaling, whether that is noticing that they are stuck, and then really figuring out what it was that was the trigger. Um, I think that a lot of times we're so used to the like, just do it, push through it, like boot camp mentality that we have in the West. And we don't pause enough to really just notice.
Mhm. That's the hardest thing for people because everybody wants answers right now, you know, and
Yeah,
it's
everyone wants answers right now.
mhm. So, and you said earlier you help people, really find their dreams. Do you ever work with their actual dreams?
I
Their like
don't. And that's why I was so excited to come on this podcast because when I was reading it before I signed up, I was like, this is so interesting because it really does when we are dreaming, especially when we're in a lot of angst, when we're stuck in that uncertainty, like I don't know, I wake up from these really powerful dreams sometimes and then I kind of forget about them.
well, I think dreams are for me, and I hope to people who are listening to this, one of the best ways to really figure out what we want. I mean, you
Yeah.
can actually do, something called dream incubation, where before you go to bed, you know, journal about it, write down what is it that I want. It could even be as simple a question as what is it that I want? And put that little piece of paper you wrote under your bed, repeat that question to yourself before you go to sleep. And if you remember your dreams, and for some people, that's easy, for some people, it's a struggle. But if you remember your dreams, you will have a dream that will help you get that clarity.
I love that. I really do. Because I think that like a lot of times like, what I am talking about is like kind of getting into your subconscious mind and really shining a light on it. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
So, Becca, you wrote a book called The Clarity Journal to help people figure out how to get what they want. So, what inspired you to write it?
So I was talking to a friend because I was at my own crossroads. I had had my second child maybe 2 years ago, and my second child is lovely. But back then he was a very high needs baby. He had a lot of ear infections. He just had a lot going on. And I felt really stuck. I had, when he was born, given up. I was running a mindfulness website where I had 90 authors writing for me and I loved it. And as soon as he was born, it just didn't work out for me to continue doing all of that extra work on top of my coaching. And so, 2 years go by, and I really was trying to figure out how to get back to what it was that really made me tick, as opposed to that early babyhood, just trying to get everything done, keep everybody alive. And so, as I was going back and forth with my friend, she finally stopped me and she was like, Becca, you're a coach. What would you tell yourself? And it made me stop and really think because I wouldn't tell my clients what to do. I would ask them a lot of questions to help them figure it out themselves, to help kind of guide them through the process of really owning what they want to do. I don't tell anyone what to do. I help them move through the process. And so as I was writing out all these questions, I think like in the first hour I had 30 questions written down and I started working on them and I realized how powerful it was just to get out of your own mind and answer someone else's questions to you, like to really think about your problem in a different way. And so it actually helped me really rediscover my writing and that actually was a core thing I wanted to be doing. And so I ended up running with it and creating this as my first book.
Mhm. And so, what advice is there in this journal that helps people find their clarity?
So there's not a ton of advice. There is like a little mini blog post length chapter summary at the beginning of each chapter to help move you through. But what it is 100 writing prompts and quotes to kind of help jar your own thought process loose and to help you get aha moments. One of my favorite questions in the Clarity Journal is, who do you envy and what does that tell you about yourself? Because I find that people only envy someone that really their heart speaks to at a certain level. Like you don't, if you're a writer, you don't envy all writers. You probably envy like three specific authors who did something unique or who have a unique lifestyle or something really resonates about how they are living. If you wanted to be a musician, I'd say the same thing. You don't envy everyone. You don't even envy everyone in the genre you want to be in. You envy very specific people. And I think that really, instead of pushing away our envy, really analyzing it can help us understand better who we are and who we want to be.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you phrase those in questions that people have to answer for themselves, because so often people want somebody else to give them the answer. And it never really works that way. I mean, they
Oh,
may get away, they may get some piece of advice that sounds good, but then you're right, at that point they don't run with it because they're not feeling it in their heart.
right. Well, and it's also why people hire coaches versus just talking to your family and friends. Because oftentimes when you're talking to a family or friend, they have an idea. Sure, I'll tell you what to do. Like we all have family and friends would be very happy if you came to them and said, "Hey, what should I do with my life?" They will give you an hour-long rendition about what you should be doing differently. So, and it falls flat because it's not coming from within.
Mhm. So by answering these questions, you would say somebody who is looking at this and answers the questions, by the time they get through, will have a much better idea of what it is that they want.
Right. And I think that as they start going through it, some questions will speak to them and some questions won't. The idea is to have a lot of questions so they can flip through and really figure out what calls to them, because whatever jumps out of the page and calls to you is really what you need to be focusing on.
How can people find out more about you and your work?
You can find me at beccaribbing.com. Becca is Becca. Ribbing is Ribbing. And you can also find the Clarity Journal on Amazon.
We've been speaking with author and coach Becca Ribbing.